I like when
Welcome, everybody. This is the History Dose live stream with History Time. We're going to bring them on in a second. Here's the thumbnail that I made for this. I am not an editor. I'm not an artist. And that's why it's crappy 2004 Microsoft PowerPoint gradient. I don't know. Is this false advertising? I feel like it seems very aggressive. It's sort of sci-fi-ish. When worlds collide, you might have clicked on this live stream expecting a cage match, or that History Time. Pete Kelly and us have never met. We have met over Zoom before. We've talked a little bit, and I'm going to bring him on right now. We're just going to have a wide-ranging discussion. So, Pete, welcome to the show.
Pete.
Hey, guys. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, always great to talk with you, and it's cool to invite an audience here to be part of the conversation. So the way it'll work throughout the show, we'll probably talk for about an hour or so, and you can hit the live chat with questions. Super chats will be given priority. Helps the show, helps support what Joe and I are doing. Again, it's just a two-man team. But we'll try to get to a bunch of questions as they come in. So I kind of want to let this be a wide-ranging discussion. We can sort of talk about anything. I know we're probably getting some of our fans that have never heard from you, Pete. They've never seen your channel, and vice versa. Some of your fans have never seen our channel. So talk to us a little bit about what your channel is.
I make very long videos. Very, very long.
Yes.
A bit longer than ours.
Yeah, it's a bit crazy. It's they started off with being about 10 minutes, but now can be 4 hours. But I like to just go very, very, very deep on a subject. So it could be anything from prehistoric Anatolia, or Mesoamerica, or anywhere in the world that takes my fancy, and I'll do a massive deep dive on it, and that's History Time pretty much.
So how did you get into that mindset where you said you started with the smaller, shorter things? Maybe you were like Joe and I not so long ago, and now you've turned into this behemoth that just swallows history content and gives us the entire history of a continent. Someone said in the chat, finally, a proper Brit.
Just piece by piece. Piece by piece. I mean, they were 5 minutes, then they were 10 minutes, then they were 20 minutes, then they were 45 minutes, and then they were an hour and a half, and then they were 4.5 hours, and that was too long, and now they're going to go back down a little bit. But okay. I just get carried away, and these subjects, they're just so fascinating. They're just endlessly fascinating, and there's so much to talk about, and from so many different angles as well. So I like to include mythology and archaeology and history and as many written sources as I can and as many opinions as I can. And there's just so much to talk about. And I do think as well that it's nice to go against the kind of shallow nature of, say, TikTok and, these 1 minute things. And
I thought you were going to say History Dose.
No, you guys make some great stuff. You guys make great stuff. But I suppose in recent years, there's an idea that audiences don't have attention spans anymore, and I just don't think that's true at all. I think if you make something that's 2 hours long, people will watch it. Will watch it. And you got to respect the audience, and the audience are great.
Thank you for the super chat, Pete Time. He says, Pete here. Is this you? Are you donating to the show, Pete?
This is me. Yeah. No.
Thank you.
This is another Pete. We are legion. There are many of us.
You called two more pop on.
Thank you, Pete. Thank you, fellow
Battle
Pete.
of Kashem video in the future. I'm looking that up. Is that in the Syrian civil war in 2018? Maybe there's an earlier Battle of Kashem.
Battle of Kashem.
It's heard of it.
I think I talked about this a little bit in the last live stream.
If that is the
Syrian civil
2018 battle, that's a little bit late for me.
Where's your cutting off point?
I really like modern history. I'm fascinated by modern history, but it's can be a little bit spicy. I find it can be a little bit YouTube-y demonetization-y, so I tend to steer clear.
Usually,
well, you're also waiting for
300
certain
years have
facts to
passed,
settle as
something's
well.
up for grabs.
Yeah, we don't know everything about something that happened 5 years ago yet. You need a bit more time, I think.
So when does your series on 9/11 come out?
Well,
you just got us demonetized.
Yeah, straight away.
The real
truth. I mean, I spend a lot of time watching documentaries about 20th century history and even 21st century history. It's too spicy. YouTube doesn't tend to be a fan. YouTube demonetizes all those things, unfortunately.
So, sort of on the theme that we were just talking about before we started getting into the demonetization realm.
We're straight into the demonetization.
Yeah, we really need the super chats here.
Every time.
I prepared a few questions that I'll just sort of be peppering in throughout the show for Pete, aka History Time. And the first one is, why ancient history? I see so much of your content is not even just, Revolutionary War, Napoleonic War. It is sort of focused on a lot of its prehistory or maybe early medieval history. So what's going on there? What's drawing you to the ancient?
That's a good question. I suppose the allure of history for me has always been the sort of alienness of it and how different it is from our world. And the further you go back in time, although we are all fundamentally very similar as individuals, the societies that we've been a part of just get weirder and weirder, and it's just so fascinating. Ancient Mesopotamia, to us, in relation to us, it's a very different place, very different, completely different worldviews that people had. And it's just endlessly fascinating. So fascinating. I mean, in the 18th century in England, it's interesting, but it's kind of similar to today, like similar worldviews. Give me someone who is worshipping the Babylonian god Marduk or something, that's endlessly fascinating to me.
So you
it almost delves into more like I feel the farther back you go, things tend to feel a bit more fantasy genre in a way.
They do.
And there's a heightened sense of reality.
We were talking about Lord of the Rings just before we got onto this stream, and I would say that Lord of the Rings was probably one of my biggest influences in my life in terms of going on to study history, because when I was first getting into history, it's kind of, you can see it as kind of like like you're reading a fantasy book, and you're getting into the lore, you're getting into all the different noble houses, say in like, I don't know, medieval Europe or whatever. And it's kind of a bit, it's fantasy-esque. It's sci-fi-esque as well, as when you go really far back.
Yeah.
Because these are often very, very isolated places. And they're like little enclaves. Like, I don't know, for example, maybe Easter Island or something is like a whole society in itself. It's a whole world in itself. And you could view that as like a alien world, basically. And I'd absolutely love it.
So it seems like you like to immerse yourself in basically what's a foreign to you ideology or mythology, and just sort of live with that, sit with that for a long time.
Pretty much, yeah. I love to just really immerse myself in something that is other than my experience. Because, I mean, I say that, but I love also the similarities that you can find. So you can find similarities in every single culture in the entire planet. And I love that because we're all human. And there are just certain things that we all do. And like we all build pyramids. Everywhere, there's pyramids everywhere.
That's
when
not to
do
was...
with ancient super civilizations. Sorry, guys.
It
but
was.
Humans just like building pyramids. Humans just really like building pyramids. You know,
you're a shill.
Humans, humans are into, like, marriage happens all over the world in all different cultures. Just certain things that we just all have that are just the same things. Like shamans happen all over the world in all different cultures.
And that's what when I was considering doing a history PhD, and just even when I did an honors thesis in undergrad, it was hard for me to select something because I was like, it feels like the same story.
Problem. It's
I
always been
can.
my problem. Yeah,
That's why the channel or
I'm
subjects jump
greedy.
around so much, because I'm like, well, I'm seeing the same thing over here, and I can't neglect this. I don't know
Yeah,
anything about ancient China. I gotta go study that, and then you're
yeah,
seeing these
for
same
sure, for sure.
stories play out
And you
over and
just
over again.
Yep,
So
absolutely. You just tumble further and further down the rabbit hole. You just keep going, and the
yeah,
more you scratch away at something, it opens up 10 new avenues that you have to investigate. Each one of those, and then each one of
Yeah.
those avenues opens up to another 10 avenues, and
We
that's
were
how
also
you end up
talking.
making a 4.5 hour thing.
We were talking before the show too about my recent interest in Neil Price's work on the Vikings, and part of that was I would like research the northern Germanic tribes, and then I went to just research the Germanic tribes. Then I started researching, I think it's called the Yamana culture that they came
Oh, the
from, and then
Yamnaya.
yeah, Yamna, yeah, and then how does that also connect to the Celtic culture? And I just like kept
Mm,
on going backwards and backwards, and it was like so
yeah,
fun to see
yeah,
all the like the different influence they had on each other. It was yeah,
absolutely,
really
absolutely.
fascinating.
Yeah, there's a real joy in that, in just going.
Yeah,
Okay, so
I
let's
feel
look
like
at
a
these guys.
detective.
Yeah, absolutely. Then you go
yeah.
to the culture before them, and the culture before them, and the
Yeah,
culture before them, and then you end up, Ice Age hunters, which is
Just
awesome.
highlighting a comment here. Finally, a proper Brit.
Well, thank you.
Just your voice, it carries a lot of authority, I feel like.
oh, I thought that was a Texas accent.
I wouldn't trust me. I would trust you.
That's very funny. That's very
That's
funny
why I
for
have to
you,
put so many
maybe
citations.
not where I live.
Yeah. You don't even need citations. Don't post your sources. I know. I'm trusting you. So talk to me a little bit about your research process, because if you're doing a 5 hour behemoth, are you, it seems like you release 5, 6 times a year. Is that fair?
That's generous. That's very
Okay.
generous, Chris. I released 2 videos in 2022, and then
My
last
God.
year. Wait, was it 1 video in 2022 and then 2 videos last year? It's the rate of video releases has gone down a lot, which
So
is
what does it
partly
look like? Are you
because
reading 50 books in that time
I'm
period?
yeah, I'm constantly reading and I'm constantly going through academic journals. So I've got a little tablet basically which I've filled with hundreds, if not thousands, yeah, probably thousands of academic journals, all arranged in different sections. And I'm constantly looking at all of them. Basically, I've worked out a system where, because I'm very greedy and I like to look at lots of different historical periods, if I get bored of one thing, I can just jump over to the next thing. So I'm constantly ping ponging between different topics, basically. So I've got a load of Bronze Age stuff on the go, a load of early medieval stuff on the go, and then a load of ancient America on the go. So those are probably my 3 main subjects. And I'm basically just constantly going between the 3.
As you're going between those, do you know that this is going towards this specific video, or are you enmeshed in
Yeah.
Mesoamerica and
Well,
you go, here's another video I'm working on?
yeah. I mean, often I will be doing the research, thinking that it's going to go into a particular video. And then I keep reading further and I realize, hang on, this needs to be a video as well. And then potentially the original video I'm working on never gets made. I mean, that's the other strange thing about the way that I work. I do have probably hundreds of ideas that have been thrown by the wayside.
There's a
I'm
graveyard
also
of
there's a
potential
graveyard.
history time.
There's a graveyard somewhere of dead history time concepts. It's like the Lion King with the giant elephant bones everywhere. Weird
You just need someone to throw enough
reference.
money at you to resurrect those.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, the big change that has happened for me in the last year or so is I did get a video editor on board. So some of the videos now are made by Damiano, who is awesome video editor. So
You
basically,
don't force your brother to do that?
David.
That's a,
David
that's
has
what
his
I do.
his own servants.
You guys have vassals.
He's there whipping his slave driving whip. No, he's got his
All right,
own.
now
team.
he's canceled.
No, I've cancelled him. He's cancelled me. We're all cancelled. Yeah. No, I haven't enlisted. Well, we've got the history of the Earth together, which we still work on together. Which again, unfortunately, the release rate of videos has gone down drastically. Partly because I got married and then took some time off. Suppose I was a little bit burned out from just constantly just churning away at the channel for like 5 years. So I needed a bit of time off. So then I've come back with a video editor as well. But also I've just got addicted to traveling to archaeological sites, basically. So that takes up a lot of time as well. It's a hard life.
It sucks.
Do your
Very,
fans
very,
get?
very
Do you have
lucky.
like
Very lucky.
It's hell.
fans that comment and say like
Yeah,
it's
I'm
been
so lucky
5
to be able to
months?
do what I do. Oh yeah, I mean it was probably, was it 9 months or something before my Mayans video came out? It was a long time, long time, and that pressure as well that you feel when you haven't released a video in a while. You see all the numbers go down, and you're like, oh god,
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to go back and work at Starbucks.
Question coming up here. When researching a video, it must be hard to stop yourself from going down unnecessary rabbit holes. That sounds
Yes.
like that's all you do, Pete.
That's all I do. That is all I do. I do often find myself just really getting in depth about something that probably never going to make a video about, but it just, it's all context, I suppose. It's all it all feeds into the overall knowledge of the subject, and then you know what to focus on if you've spent a lot of time knowing what not to focus on, if that makes sense.
Got a comment from
Speaking in
Ivar,
riddles
or
now.
more accurately, Ivar the Boneless. These guys are a big part of the reason I like history so much. Thanks.
Oh, thank
thank
you,
you.
Ivar the Bonus.
You're
I
welcome.
enjoyed the first season of the TV show Vikings.
Yeah, me too. The first couple seasons were good, and then
Got
I
a bit
don't know.
silly after that.
got a bit like the Vikings felt like punk gothic rock stars.
Yeah,
So
well,
the
they always
actual
did from the
Vikings.
start, really, but it was all
Yeah.
right at the beginning.
Black leather and eyeliner.
Legendarian says, "Sup, gang." That was, he was the only one who guessed history time from my post. I said, this is a history creator that does very long form medieval and ancient history videos mostly, and we got a couple of guesses, but he was the only one who guessed it. All right, let me jump to question 2 that I have here, and you got to give me a second here because I have some stipulations on the questions. On this question to prevent a very boring answer. All right. So you get to spend a
Okay.
week in the past, at least 1,000 years ago. So you can't go 20 years ago. Where and when do you
Neolithic stone
choose?
circles. Stone circles. Stone circles. Definitely
So-
stone circles. What's going on? What's happening?
No.
Let's
Okay,
go
you
to-
got to listen.
We're
to
going
these
to Avebury.
qualifications.
We're going to Avebury. Okay, so
All right.
carry on.
So 1, you blend
Can't
in.
go
You
to
can.
stone circles.
So the
stipulation.
first stipulation is that you can blend in and you can speak the language. So no one's going to be like,
Perfect.
who's this guy? You look like everybody. You can talk like everybody, no matter where you go. 2, you're immortal, so don't just pick the safest place that's possible, some remote farm in Mesopotamia that no one visits. And 3, you can't use it to solve historical debates. You can't see where Genghis Khan's tomb is. You can't figure out where the stone circles, what the purpose of them was.
So I can't go to the stone circles.
It can't be a fact-finding mission. I'm saying you immerse yourself in some
Okay.
ancient city or township or culture.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this is as much as you get to spend a week in the past as you have to spend a week in the past. I'm sending you somewhere. Where you're going. And if the chat has some, you guys can put it in the chat what you guys would choose here.
Oh, I've got so many questions. Can't answer any of these questions.
It can't be
It's a hard question.
It might be something you kind of want to see, but it can't be the main purpose is to find one specific moment in time, what actually happened.
Okay. Well, I would really love to go to a big old festival at Stonehenge in 2500 BC, see what's happening. But that's not allowed, is it? Maybe
I'll allow it. I'll allow it. It's
instead,
not.
Will you allow it? I mean, that's just what was going on. What was going on, Chris? What was happening at Stonehenge?
Yeah, why can't we find facts?
Because then you're going to be, where's Genghis Khan's tomb, so that you can come back 1,000 years later and find the gold.
I'm okay. I'm okay
yeah.
with Genghis Khan can stay hidden. That's fine. He can stay
Also,
hidden.
on the second point, you can't abuse the immortal thing. Like, you can't be OP in a war or something. You can't.
I think it
I
would
was thinking,
help being immortal.
If
though,
you
'cause
die,
could
you
very
wake up
easily-
back in the present.
You could very easily end up dead or sacrificed.
Yeah.
Or, to be honest, I would probably, on the first day, contract dysentery and just die. Like, it would be some sort of ancient disease.
Yeah.
Would just kill me off because there's no clean water in a lot of places. We'll put it that way.
Yeah. You'd have like a nice first 5 hours in Teotihuacan or something, and then
Yeah, exactly.
you
And
just
then
have
that's the end of
diarrhea
me.
for the rest of it.
Absolutely. It'd just be awful. Yeah. Hey, Teotihuacan would be a fantastic place to go to. I'd be very, very happy to go there, see what's going on. I'd be very happy to be immortal there as well, because I do think, even though you can speak the language and blend in, you could easily end up sacrificed, I think, by just
You don't think
sticking
you can
out
make a
bit.
week without getting sacrificed? You couldn't. You don't have enough charms.
I don't know, man. No, I'm nosy. I'd be nosing around, and someone had to be like, "What's that guy doing?" Yeah. Maybe I would go to 5th century AD Netherlands and just maybe go on a little boat across to Britannia, see what's going on.
All right, I wasn't expecting that.
See if I mean, I'm always asking these questions. I can't be doing that because I want to find out if they were using sails or not.
No, you can't do that.
Isn't that when England pulled out of Rome, right?
Yeah. But it's this thing we were talking about earlier, Anglo-Saxons being very similar to Vikings, but there is an idea that the Anglo-Saxons didn't have sails, whereas Vikings had sails. And it's kind of a debated point a little bit. It's mostly thought that they didn't have sails, but
they practiced
crazy crossing the sea
burials,
without sails.
but yeah, I don't know if they were ships at all. They were just boats.
Yeah, it's thought that they were using rowing boats, which is just hardcore.
Let me see a couple what these people are saying.
Not very satisfactory answers, but Japan during the Samurai Wars. Yes, that would be awesome.
Yeah, especially if you're immortal.
Right,
you're good.
I've got it. I would go to the Battle of Gaugamela, 331 BC, between Alexander the Great and Darius, and can I fly? If I can fly, I'll just
gotta type in the right
it.
commands, and then you can.
Yeah,
I think that's how.
Yeah.
If you can fly, that's how you get people to want to sacrifice you. Or worship. You're gonna mess up the past if you can fly. There's gonna be some new religion based on Pete, and once you come back, it'll be some stone inscription of you.
Yeah, that'd be confusing.
And then you do a history time video on the Pete religion. Definitely, we got 1066 William the Conqueror. We got someone saying, "Look at Pete's helmet next to his head. He's a LARPer." Cool. By the look of it.
I'm actually not a LARPer in any way, shape, or form.
It is a cool helmet.
Besides when I'm just by myself, I actually got that to do some stock footage.
Okay.
So if you watch my video last video on Vikings, I made a load of footage using that helmet basically to fill out a lot of just empty space.
We got Jerusalem 1098. There'd be some crusades. Napoleonic
I think that would be
Wars.
depressing. Jerusalem 1098.
Yeah.
There's a lot of horrible things that happened in the.
Honestly, whatever war
Crusade.
you go to, you're not gonna come back the same person once you're watching those wars.
Yeah. But the First Crusade, though, there was so much starving and so much probably cannibalism that it just wouldn't be very nice because
you're immortal though, so you get to walk by.
Yeah, but just watching a load of malnourished people from like Belgium trying to walk. It was just I'd rather see Alexander the Great and Darius. That'd be cool. Just see sheer, what 300,000 men looks like.
Yeah, and any of the
That'd be
Roman
insane.
wars too, I think, just Greco-Roman stuff. What does it look like to have
Yeah.
when you see those things in a museum, you see these old shields and helmets, it's almost like this, it looks so fictional. How did this was the way people fought wars back then?
Absolutely.
And to see
Absolutely.
20,000 people on a field of battle,
Yeah, what did that
looking
look like?
like
What did it
that.
smell like? And
What did-
it just
phalanx formation look like? How terrifying was it when you were there?
yeah, absolutely. Teutoburg Forest. Let's go there. Let's watch some Romans getting bashed by the Germans. That'd be interesting.
I feel like Cahokia would be very cool, the Mississippian culture.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Because when you see those recreations, you're always like, I can't believe this was here.
Yeah.
But you
it's
also know that
incredible.
so much of that is speculative
Yeah.
archaeology. What can we say it looked like? I would just like to be able to immerse myself in that and go, wow, I can't believe this is happening here. What are these trade networks like?
Absolutely. What was really going on? Particularly with Cahokia, because so much of it was made of wood, right? And bare, and like not much survives, because obviously with the Mayans, it's all in stone, so you can still see everything. But Cahokia, it's just kind of all just mounds that are left, or it's really sad, And,
So
because there's so little left, the Mississippi mound builders and cultures like that really had a bad time. Like the early Americans in the 1800s would just destroy the mounds. I was reading about St. Louis, which is actually built on top of a Mississippian city.
Louvres and Peter.
Yeah. And inside the city, there are like one or two mounds left inside the city, but there used to be, it was another city a bit like Cahokia, but they kind of demolished it to put their own one on top of it because they were just seen as sort of like, primitive savages, basically. And a lot of people also thought that the Mississippi mound builders were Atlanteans. So there we go.
Yeah, so
Atlantis
who knows
popping
what
up
you
everywhere.
find?
If you are
Exactly.
unfamiliar
Atlantean
with Cahokia,
gold.
go check it out. This is let me see if there's a recreation picture here on the Wikipedia page. But essentially, it's a Mississippi mound building culture, and at some point, this was a huge center of trade. You can see here, according to Wikipedia, between 15,000, 20,000 people. And this is pre-Columbian. So a lot of times we think the big, huge cities and cultures in the Americas pre-Columbus were centered in Central and South America, or Tenochtitlan, but we actually have some pretty big North American
If
proper
you go down, have
continental
a look at that
States.
map. Look at that map, and that map is a good map, and it's just they're everywhere. They're all over the place,
Yeah.
and they're all
Who's
trading
the
with each other.
what was the culture behind the Serpent Mound in Ohio?
Hopewell.
I don't know if it has it listed
Look
here.
look
but
that up, Chris. That's just a stunning image. All the drone shots of it.
Hopewell is jumping to mind, but I could be wrong. There are lots of
here's
cultures
a
in the
recreation
Mississippi
of some of
Mountains.
the mounds. Wattle and daub structure on top. I mean, look at that.
A lot of wattle and daub.
We gotta do a history dose on that, and then Joe can paint his own interpretation of it.
So, little sneak preview. I will be doing Cahokia.
Okay,
Ooh.
awesome.
ETA? Next week.
I'm going to be visiting
Oh, nice.
2035.
the end of this year.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah.
All right.
We won't let
only
anyone know,
the
don't
few
worry.
people that tuned into this live stream will know.
The
Keep it on
three
wraps.
people.
They just show up.
Yeah.
You can see
Ooh,
here's
go
the
look
Serpent
at the other
Mound in Ohio. You can see a little curvature here.
There's like
And it's
a couple
Really
shots
big,
from
isn't it?
above.
Which
too.
what culture?
Yeah, what culture is this?
Let's see what it was.
I see. What does it say?
It's unknown. Origin.
More than 2,000 years old. New radio card.
Wow.
I don't know
Fort
if they can
Ancient.
say with.
Fort Ancient people. It said.
Oh, okay.
Fort Ancient.
Oh, here we go.
It says Hopewell right there.
Hopewell,
Okay.
Adena, who are before,
prior to the
and then,
Adena and Hopewell cultures.
and then you have Hopewell.
Paleo
But-
Indians.
So much of
Yeah.
that stuff, it's
There's a
you're
lot of
sort
it,
of digging
and it's-
through archaeology and trying to
Yeah,
figure out
that's
what
right,
you can.
that's right. I mean, all these names are
Here's
just
a
names
image.
that have been
Looks like a
like
golf course. almost.
Hopewell, Adena. All these names are just names that are given to it by archaeologists in the 1900s. So, what they actually called themselves, no one's got any idea, and that's just so awesome. Because I mean, the people of Cahokia may have, who knows? Did they see themselves as a completely different nation as everybody else around,
Yeah,
or
Maybe they
did
call
speak
themselves
the same
Americans.
Maybe.
I remember
Where
reading.
where
'cause we
does
did-
America come from? The name, the word. America.
The map maker, right? It's an
Amerigo
Italian map
Vespucci.
maker. Yeah.
Yep.
Is it not one of these things where, or is it an urban legend where somebody asked one of the natives something and he said America, and then they completely got the wrong end of the stick and thought that the whole place was called that?
No, I don't think it's that. It's
That's
is-
one of those old wives'
There
tales.
is something
that I've
from
heard.
that though. It wasn't for the country, but it might have been for one of the indigenous tribes.
Yeah.
there are groups like that.
Yeah, where they mistake something that they said for.
But yeah, I think
That Caribs as well. Like, wasn't that a
Oh, that could be it.
mistranslation or something, or
Yeah, that could be
misinterpretation
it.
of something they were saying?
Someone's just commented Battle of Alesia. That would be another one to look at because that is one of the craziest battles that I can think of. Do you know the one when Caesar fought against Vercingetorix?
Oh, no, I'm aware
There
of
was-
that.
There was a siege.
How they
and then
open up
Ce-
HBO's Rome, I think, too.
So
oh yeah. Oh, the
So- the Romans were besieging the Celts, and then the Celts came to besiege the Romans, and the Romans still managed to win. So there's just this insane siege on a siege that's going on.
oh right. Yeah, and you look at some of the recreations of that. Let me share my screen here. Let's see, share screen. Yeah, I think all that stuff where you're kind of like, what? I can't even, if I saw it with my own eyes, I wouldn't believe
Yeah.
it.
Just the carnage that was going on. Absolute carnage.
We got a 400 BC Sparta, Battle of
Vienna.
Vienna, 1683. That would be crazy.
That would be
Precise.
crazy.
This isn't gaming or tarot readings, right? I don't think we're getting into any of that.
Let's do some
Pete, can
tarot
you tell me-
readings, guys.
Yeah, can you tell me
Yeah.
the future here? When is your video coming out? I don't even think they could tell.
Sometime in the next 25 years.
Zanj Rebellion. I have some. That's one of the
I've got a
perspective
video on the
topics
Zanj
for history.
Rebellion.
Okay,
I've got a video on it that I made about 5-6 years ago, which is probably
back when you did
absolutely
shorter
awful.
ones. Back when you were the original history dose.
Yeah. No, to be fair, your videos have always been good. Your videos have been good from day dot.
Well, thank you. I think the style has changed so much. Do you guys
Yeah.
plan on what
Oh,
you're going
it's
to talk
changed
talk
a
about
little
here?
bit.
Not really. Does it seem like we are enormous? I prepared some wild questions, but
You guys can shoot us some
One
topics too.
yeah, we kind of wanted to just go with the
Yeah, if
flow.
anybody wants to ask any questions, go ahead.
Oh, he's insulting us. Do you guys have any idea what you're talking about? Oh yeah.
No.
Oh yeah. Oh right. Something. I think
Nice.
this is it's actually all scripted. All of those are to increase the sense of realism.
We actually asked ChatGPT to construct a script for a history dose conversation, and this is what it came up with.
We're actually
not
not
even
here
real.
right now as AI avatars.
This is all AI. It's
All right. So
dream.
my third question, you have to give up YouTube. What do you do instead?
Ooh,
Well, what were you doing before?
I was working many minimum wage jobs. I worked in a pub, the classic English pub, pulling lovely pints of ale, which was a very enjoyable job. Then I worked for a ticket company selling tickets over the phone, putting tickets into envelopes, and working at music festivals, which again was a very fun job. No money whatsoever. Barely enough money to live, basically. So, yeah, I wouldn't want to do that again. I'd definitely want to try and do something in history, which was always my plan all along. But it's quite hard. It's quite hard to do something in history because everything was volunteer when I graduated with my master's degree. It was all volunteer work, everything. I mean, I'd love to work in a museum. I'd love to work in. I always wanted to work in a museum. A museum was like pinnacle of a job for me. Museum. So yeah, that'd be awesome. But the problem is there are like no museums where I live. So
yeah, you would be a volunteer again too.
Again, yeah, probably. Yeah, I'd just be one of those people doing like guided walks in the British Museum or something and not getting paid for it. Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm very happy that YouTube exists. I mean, it was never the plan to be a YouTuber whatsoever. That was never the plan whatsoever. But it's great. Absolutely love it. I suppose I would probably just try and be a researcher of some variety.
You'd want to basically try to do something.
I want to do what I'm doing
you're
now.
doing now. Yeah.
I want to keep doing what I'm doing now, but in a different form. Maybe I'd try and write for magazines or something, or try and write for, I don't know, or I'd go back into academia. In fact, that's definitely what I'd do. I'd just go back and do a PhD. And
which I think is considered volunteer work as well.
Yeah, it is. But
I'm
married now. I'm married now. I just rely on my wife. I'll just be the sort of I'll be a house husband and just doing my pointless PhD, learning about ancient things.
Yeah, she's asking you to watch the kids in the real world. Just looking at pictures of Cahokia.
Exactly.
Ed asks, most fascinating ancient religion.
Most fascinating ancient religion.
I know Joe's answer.
Just looking over at my books.
Joe's been sending me so much stuff about Viking religion lately.
Could you consider it ancient if it came about more around the 5th and 6th century? Norse paganism specifically.
Yeah, I consider that ancient.
I'd consider it ancient in the context of Scandinavia. It's ancient. I mean, it's pre-writing,
and it has such close ties to those different tribes that Rome was fighting against that you can consider it a religion of ancient origin.
Yeah. For me, I might go with. I mean, I would probably, go with somewhere in the Americas. I might go for the Maya religion. Is pretty wild. Probably go.
Why do you consider that pretty wild?
Well, the sacrifices is pretty wild. Like you go to Tenochtitlan in 1479 or something. I can't remember the exact date, but there's a date in Tenochtitlan when one of the new emperors of the Aztec Empire is crowned, and on his coronation, according to Diego Duran, who probably embellished it a bit, but it's something like 20,000 individuals are sacrificed, and it's like that's wild. But people thought that was necessary. Yeah. People were thinking this is a great thing that's happening. We are sorting out the world. We are going to survive for ages to come after this. We don't, because they were constantly placating the gods to ensure the continuation of the world, and the sacrificial blood would refresh society. And that's just wild, man. That's like such an extreme version of that idea. That idea pops up all over the world. But
they had a deity too that was, wasn't there like a god of flayed skin? And they would wear the flayed skin of a
the priests would wear the flayed skin. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And just it's wild that I mean, I'm sure there were some psychos who were loving doing the sacrificing, but on the whole, it seems like the people doing it was a duty. They were doing it because they cared for their people. It wasn't like a bloodthirsty thing doing it for the sake of it. They fully believed that they were saving the world by doing that.
Yeah, and I think you go far back enough in anybody's history, in your ancestry, and you're going to find similar things like that in your ancestry of like, what
For
did your
sure.
ancestors believe? At a certain point, they believed killing people for a
For
deity or
sure.
spirit was the way
This
to make the world a better place.
Absolutely. This is why I want to go to Stonehenge, because I think similar things are going on. I think there's a similar kind of sentiment going on at places like Stonehenge. And it's all about the sacrifice. When you go to the ancient world, you could say that, complex society is based on sacrifice at its very roots. Almost every society on earth has sacrifice, human sacrifice, often at the very beginning.
Though I do wonder if
Rome
sometimes that
Hated that it
is,
had human sacrifice, but Rome did it a lot back in the day,
Hmm.
and
though
then
I
they
do wonder
hated
if
it
some of
afterwards.
that is what sort of sticks in our mind or what could be found through the archaeological record. Are we
Yeah,
gleaning one aspect and saying it's all built on sacrifice, or is there sort of this huge compendium and the only thing that would survive of that unwritten codex of knowledge
could well
is
be. Could
the
well be.
corpses
I
of
mean, this is why archaeology is so great, because there's just we've got it's constantly changing. It's constantly changing with new information coming in, and we always have an incomplete picture. It's always There's a lot of speculation in archaeology. There's a lot of speculation, and that's a good thing. That is a good thing, I think, because it changes over time, and you should never be completely sure in archaeology, because you can't be. Things are like consensuses are always changing over time. New information can come up, and every book on a society has to be rewritten.
Okay, so we have a question. Super chat, thank you very much, Zero Connection. Without delving into Graham Hancock territory, why do you think pyramids are found worldwide?
Well, it's quite an obvious way of getting up high. It's an obvious
Yeah.
way of building a monument that is impressive, and not impossibly difficult to make and plan. It also looks like a mountain, and could be something in that. People
Requires
have an
less
idea.
directly vertical scaffolding to get the
Yeah,
height
that's
on the
true.
monument.
That's true. That's true. You can gradually build it up.
Yeah,
Gradually
so
build it
you're
up over
basically
time.
almost building like a staircase that's towards a point.
I mean, some of the Egyptian pyramids are really like quite amazing constructions, like with all the inner chambers. But a lot of
Yeah.
other pyramids around the world are purely external monuments, so they didn't require that much planning. Really, it's basically piling things to make big monument.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
something
like
that
it's worth
reaches
noting too that
heaven.
Yeah, getting
It's worth
closer to the
noting-
heaven, getting close to the gods.
yeah, that they were building these for aliens as well. So
Exactly. And the alien ships, the way that they're built, they have an inner thing. You've seen Stargate.
It was a landing pad.
Yeah.
That was going to be your second point. It's easy to build it, and then the aliens wanted them to make it that way. I think the other thing about it is it's just sort of. Or no, actually, what I was going to ask about that is how much stock do you put into the sort of experiments and study of the aligning of certain structures? I'm always puzzled because I haven't delved too much into sort of megalithic structures, but you'll often hear these things sometimes from big, this is aliens, that sort of field, people in that camp, but also reputable people that say this is aligned with whatever the stars would have been like during the winter solstice or something. How convincing do you find that stuff? Do you think there's
a
usually
lot
something
of
going on there?
there's a lot of woo woo. We're going into woo woo territory there. There's a lot of wishful thinking potentially. I mean, some of it could be like these places, they really do. Weird things happen on the winter equinox and the summer solstice. Weird alignments do happen. For example, like the sun will shine through the stones at Newgrange on the winter equinox, I think it is, and similar thing happens at Stonehenge and the summer solstice. Further than that, I know that some stone circles have been speculated to line up with stars and things like this, and people have looked at how the constellations would have looked, say, 5,000 years ago, or a bit later. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting stuff. It's a whole entire field of study there, like archaeoastronomy and all these things, and people have dedicated their entire lives to these things.
Isn't there a huge thing with astrology and Göbekli Tepe as well?
Oh yeah, I mean
Trying to chart the monuments to the stars.
Everyone's getting
Astronomy
involved
or
with
astrology?
Göbekli Tepe. Yeah, which one? Astrology.
Astronomy,
They're very
yeah.
different. I mean,
We'll be doing
astrologists.
tarot readings later.
Astrologists are very involved in Göbekli Tepe. Yeah, everybody's involved in Göbekli Tepe. So yeah, there's lots of astronomical alignments supposedly happening there. I don't know too much about that.
Yeah, we had a question way earlier about the Tweetongan Empire, and big
Pacific.
Yeah, big Pacific Empire. Joe and I have been trying to find another excuse to sort of get back to Polynesia, Polynesian, because we did the Easter Island one, and then we did the Hawaiian one, but just something that lets us sit with that entire field of star navigation in Polynesia is super interesting.
Oh yeah,
and
that's very interesting. It gets a bit Viking-y as well, because the Vikings potentially were doing similar things of using the stars to chart and things like that, and landmarks and all this stuff. Yeah, the Polynesian exploration, expansion, whatever you call it, is just incredible. It's absolutely incredible.
I took a course in college with a very good professor named Eric Tagliacozzo, and the course was just called Oceans, which is not really how you should be branding. There's a better way to brand it, but because I knew the professor, I knew it would be good, and it was very good. And one of the things that came up was this. We had a whole article that we read on Polynesian navigation and how there were still, at the time of when he printed the article, it seemed like it was a few decades old, but there are still a few people that can do the old star navigation. And they're just these old Polynesian men on these wooden canoes. And once the sun goes down, they're able to just, it's this entire sort of memorized system for mapping the stars and knowing where you are. And when you think about it, so many of those islands in the Pacific were populated so late. You know, whether it's Easter Island or Hawaii, you're talking about what we would consider medieval era or late medieval era, Renaissance period, when people, those are the first humans getting to that island. And for them to be able to find a new island, but oftentimes get back to a previous island that's 200 miles away. At that point, you realize how confident they were in this star system, that it wasn't like, I think the north one's over there. It's like, I know exactly how to get back and to trade. And,
it was a science. I mean, it was a science. And the people who are really good at it, they're the ones who survived, I suppose, because if you weren't good, you'd disappear. You're gone.
The people like me that just know the one star.
I'd be done for. Come on, guys, get on my boat. No, we're gone. When was Easter Island populated?
So I did a video on it. I think it's thought 1200 to 1400 AD, I believe.
Similar to New Zealand, then.
Yeah. So you had people moving from New Zealand in that sort of chain of islands, and then moving much farther east and peopling those islands. And then, it's so recent that a lot of the language is still more or less mutually intelligible, and you can see exactly the gods that they're worshiping have almost the exact same name as the gods in New Zealand, or
You have
clearly the same face.
Maui, the trickster god, who
Yeah, and
is
it
Yeah.
all
might
over.
have a slightly different name on Hawaii or
Slightly
something, but
different name.
you
Yeah.
can see that
Yeah.
entire pantheon is still there, and then the concept of mana and stuff like that. So
Yes. 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 Wasn't Maui played by The Rock at
The
some point?
Rock, yeah.
Dwayne The
Yeah.
Rock Johnson.
yeah,
Maui. It's good casting. That good.
you need
Story's
to
very
get him
accurate.
for the reenactment segments, the stock footage that you're doing. You need to get him.
Just get The Rock. Yeah. What would he
Yeah.
be doing? What The Rock just in this helmet? That helmet.
I don't know. Here's the thing: when we're going back in time, based on what I've seen from the movies, everybody was jacked and 8 feet tall.
And nobody wore helmets as well. If you're a main
Yeah.
character,
You just have long flowing hair and
exactly.
an 8
Because
pack.
otherwise, who's going to know who you are?
Yeah. The
You usually get
Spartans were
one
just
wound on
roided
your
up.
eye, and then
Yeah,
you're
little
immune for the
wound,
rest of the movie. So
That's it. Yeah. Yeah.
Kelly, he's just calling you by your last name. Kelly, will you make
Kelly.
a documentary on the Mongol Empire?
I feel like I'm back in school.
I
Kelly.
think you've done it before.
what is that
I
profile pic there?
have. That is something from medieval Europe. Oh, is that?
But yeah.
Is that a penance that a king is doing or something?
Looks
Or is
like
it a
I was
king
going to say
being
baptism,
baptized?
but it would make sense that I mean they probably practice infant baptism.
Yes,
medieval
I'm thinking that.
Catholicism.
Well, there was a German king who had to do penance and he had to walk in the snow in front of the Pope. Maybe it's that. Just
I feel
going
like
out on a
we've
limb there. I have covered the Mongol Empire before. I would like to go back and cover the Mongol Empire again because it was a topic that I did a lot when I first started about 6 years ago, and I haven't revisited. So I'd like to one day.
yeah, we've done a lot of stuff on
It's
the
great
Mongols.
stuff.
We have one coming up. It's not our next video, but our next. Partly in the theme of what we're doing, which is we're traveling to Mongolia in August. It's a group trip, so
Yeah.
it's not completely filled out. I think I actually put a link to it if anybody wants to check out the itinerary just in the description of this video. And yeah, there's still some spots open and we're leaving in August. Just sort of on that idea of travel. I'm always seeing these different images. You're traveling the world, basically Indiana Jonesing around. Tell me about where you've been and if there are any places that stand out to you as uniquely, I don't know if transcendent is the word, but something that really shocked you or rocked your world to
Yeah.
stand in a certain place.
The Yucatan Peninsula is transcendent for sure. The Mayan cities, to walk in the overgrown, huge remains of these vast cities is just incredible, absolutely incredible. Particularly when you get a bit further into the Yucatan and you go to the places where you're only there with 5 or 6 other people, and you have the whole city to yourself, and you can hear howler monkeys. The nature has taken over the place once more, and you realize just how ephemeral everything is. These great kings and mighty dynasties that have just fallen, and nature has reclaimed the place, and that's just awesome. Love that. Love that. I mean, you can go to a city, say in Anatolia or Greece, and it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. But nature hasn't moved into the sheer extent that it has in the jungle. So if you go into the jungle to an ancient city, it's like it's just another world. It's a crazy experience.
I
Have
would
you
say,
guys ever been
never to
like
the
to
Yucatan.
a jungle ruin?
No, I would
Go
love
to a
to go,
jungle
though.
ruin. Yeah,
We've been
you'd
to
love it. You'd love it.
Teotihuacan is probably the closest thing. And then
I'd love to go.
Tenochtitlan
That's cool.
within Mexico City was very cool. But it is a similar thing to what you were saying about Greece or Italy.
They're very
Actually, I
well
haven't been to
maintained
Greece, I've been to
sites,
Italy.
and
Yep.
Teotihuacan
They're well
was
maintained.
explored quite a bit.
And the thing that has crept in is city, is roads and
Yeah.
and
And
modern
that is-
buildings and stuff.
it takes away from the experience of going to a place for me. Just
Yeah.
I like
You can
I
see
like the
McDonald's
wilderness
behind it and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Like going to the pyramids last year, amazing, absolutely amazing. But all the footage that you see of the pyramids, it's like pristine desert. The reality is there's a Pizza Hut next door. You know, there's vast urban sprawl within a couple of kilometers. You know,
Yeah.
So you oppose the opening of the new Pizza Hut in the Mayan homeland?
I would
Just
I
right in
would
the middle
oppose,
of the.
I would oppose that. The interesting thing about the Maya is that, I mean, a lot of people don't realize the extent to which they are still massively surviving. There are millions of Maya
The
people
language
who
too,
still,
Mhm.
still inhabit the Yucatan and Guatemala and northern Honduras and where else, Belize. But since, let's say, the 1960s, a lot of Mexicans have moved into the area because it's kind of like a bit of a frontier area, and Mexicans have moved in. So, like, people of Hispanic heritage, let's say, and places like Cancun have built up, which is just essentially like an extra state of the US because it's basically just Americans in Cancun.
Yeah.
And it's just a real shame because it was pristine rainforest until the 1960s. And then these amazing, incredible, ancient cultures that are still living are kind of being eroded away. And it's I find it sad.
Do you know, is there with those surviving Mayan cultures, is there any strain of spiritual or religious belief that still exists, like almost a pre-Christian? Oh, okay.
Definitely.
Interesting.
There is, for example, a church in Guatemala. There's probably lots of churches in Guatemala, but there's one that I have heard of. And the things that go on in that church, it's all pagan. Like it's dressed up as Catholicism, but it's pre-Christian Maya religion, dressed up as Catholicism. It's this syncretism of the ancient gods being
With
brought
saint
into the
figures.
fold of Catholicism, basically. Yeah, absolutely. And in recent years, you know, since the, I suppose, decline of Christianity in the West, a lot of indigenous people have turned back to the older beliefs as well. So there's kind of like a flourishing of, you know, what would you call it? They're just the old ways, basically, the old belief systems, which is cool. I like, you know, it's all about the variety of life, isn't it? You know.
When you are looking at places to travel to, what's the process? Are you mapping out 15 different sites you want to go to and booking 12 different flights, or what's it look like? Do you have a clear goal every time you travel?
Yeah, it differs place to place. Sometimes I have got like a hit list where I need to go to, and then I'll just organize the logistics. Other times, I've gone with a tour group before. In Mexico, I went with a tour group, which was awesome. So it was a Maya archaeological tour. It was me, just a load of really cool people, and we just went around looking at Mayan cities. So that was awesome, and that was going to very remote places. So I would recommend, if you're going to very remote places, probably go with some other people. Don't go alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then Greece, for example, it's a lot easier to just do your own thing. Yeah, because it's kind of there's more infrastructure. You're not going to just die in the jungle.
Any bucket list place that you haven't even gotten close to yet?
Bucket list place. Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan.
Afghanistan, with all the syncretism between Buddhism,
Indo-Bactrian,
Hinduism, and Greco.
Greco-Bactrian.
Yeah, I love that stuff.
Greco-Scythian, it's just there's so many syncretisms there.
It's all the
Well,
stuff that
I
you thought was so neatly divided when you learned about these cultures in school, and then all of a sudden you're seeing Greco-Roman style Buddha or a Hindu god that's sort of conflated with a Greco-Roman god, and you're just like, wow,
Absolutely.
I didn't even think these people ever knew about each other.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like just, you know, a statue of Athena showing up in Kandahar. And you're like, that's fascinating. It's really far away from Greece.
Darth Tater is a big fan of yours, and now he's going to check out the other guy's channel. Thank
All
you, Will.
right.
Good
Thank you,
channel.
Darth Tater. And if you're a fan of History Dose, check out History Time too. Especially if you're frustrated if our videos end too soon, History Time will satisfy you.
I saw that Ed has asked, "What is your favorite historical film?" That's a good question. I like films a lot. What are your favorite films, guys? Historical films?
Chris knows what mine is.
Joe's going to say The Northman, I think.
The Northman. The Northman isn't. So here's the thing about The Northman.
I enjoyed it a lot.
It's not historical in this actually happened, but it's historical in the sense of this is how the North Germanic tribes thought about the world. This is how they thought about their own sagas.
Yeah.
It had so much rich detail with regards to like little things that like just tiny little things that you barely notice, like all the Vikings holding up their bracelets as the king arrives in his mead hall. And we have no written record of stuff like that happening, but we find some etchings throughout history of people doing that, like little symbols of the king and people holding their bracelets up. So it has these tiny little details that just tries to make it as immersive as possible. So it's probably my favorite.
Totally, yeah. I loved that film. And a lot of it is directly taken from the sagas, which is just, just awesome.
And
it's
they
just
also,
this idea of like that was how they saw themselves. Love that.
Yeah, and they also have
how they wanted to be seen. I suppose they wanted.
They have
to
some
like
Sami aesthetic in it as well, because we know that the Vikings also had interactions with the Sami, and I think one of the drums that the He Witch is using is a Sami drum, and then I think during the funeral scene they have some type of Sami covering over the body or something, some sheet, because they were just trying to go into such insane detail that there would have been some cultural crossover and stuff between the two cultures. So
absolutely. I love that bleeding of cultures into other cultures. That's one of the most fascinating things about history.
Yeah,
absolutely.
What
about you, Chris?
It doesn't so much scratch the itch of here is a completely different culture that you're getting to be immersed in, but I think as an encapsulation of a certain experience, Master and Commander is amazing for giving you just
Good
the
film.
utter horror of naval warfare in sort of the late age of sail. And I think that just the horror of splinters going through and being carried below to the orlop deck and amputations, that I don't know if I would have given this answer before I did our Trafalgar video, but what comes out of that is just, this is, you so often think of, if I want to hang a calming painting in my doctor's office, you have the old big warships and maybe there's some plume of smoke coming out. Well, zoom in and you're going to see someone's guts being splayed against the mast. It's like
hundreds of people screaming for their lives in the water. I enjoy a lot of historical films. One that jumps out always is, it's not the most historically accurate film, but Apocalypto is one that I just absolutely love. I love that film. Absolutely.
Apocalypto, I put it in a similar category to The Northman, where it's almost like a pastiche of different, cultural influences. Because I don't think they ever touch on it as this Maya or Aztec. It's like, I think Gibson took a lot of different.
I think they're speaking Mayan. So I think it is supposed to be Mayan, but the time frame is very loose.
It doesn't work.
Because it looks like a classic Maya city, but then the Spanish turn up. So it's just, as you say, it's kind of like a vignette or something. It's like it's not a historically accurate story. We'll put it that way. Another one of that same vein is Gladiator as well.
Yeah.
Obvious one.
Sequels
but
coming out,
again,
apparently.
Not very historically accurate, but it feels accurate. It feels like ancient Rome.
Yeah, I guess it's that feeling of immersion, even if every detail isn't there. You're seeing a little bit of what it looked like to see a Roman battle against the barbarian hordes in the middle of a
Yeah.
forest, and you're like, this is unbelievable. You're getting a bit
Absolutely,
of the
yeah.
vibe of if you were standing in the center of the Colosseum and you're seeing the crowds go wild. What is that like? And I think probably that's captured by Apocalypto in a way, in the same sense that I was saying I'd love to see Cahokia. That it
Oh
sort
yeah.
of gives you that vibe of what does a Mayan city look like? You know, what is it like seeing that pyramid come over the top of this
Absolutely.
huge city,
Absolutely.
Mesoamerican, pre-Columbian? So
And the whole I keep talking about human sacrifice. I'm not a weirdo, guys, but the human sacrifice scene is just amazing. The pageantry of the whole thing and how everybody's dressed up in the huge costumes. They're kind of dressed up as the deities. And
Yeah.
if you're just like a poor worker, you're watching all that. You're like, this is amazing. This is like a whole show going on. It's like going to the cinema or something, which is kind of a similar thing for ancient Rome. We're
The
kind of a
rest is
grim
just
species. We're kind of a grim
yeah.
species because then people are obsessed with executions as well when it gets
The
to the sort of early modern time.
the Rest is History podcast has a series on the contact with the Aztecs, and there's one scene that they painted really well, and it was an account of the Spanish seeing some of their captured men. They were out in a camp, but they could see, you know, they could see about 300 yards off one of the
Yeah.
towering pyramids, and watching their, fellow comrades being ushered up to the top of the pyramids, dressed in these
Yeah.
foreign headdresses and feathers and this paint, and they were just going into how wild it must have been. They're in a completely different world, and now they're drugged up and they're going to be sacrificed to these gods that they know nothing about, and they're
Yeah.
in this completely foreign costume and they have no idea what's going on. It's wild.
Absolutely. And Cortez and his, I believe that's when Cortez and his men had got back to a boat that they got back. They'd fled to a boat and they were fleeing Tenochtitlan over to the other side of the lake, and they just had to leave them all behind.
Yeah, they
And
did.
it must have just been a horrendous
Harrowing.
moment, very demoralizing.
Because
But
I'm
then
gonna
disease won the war for them anyway. So
Yeah, I'm gonna pee real quick, so I'll be right back.
well, I also think that we have this. I love to see the first contacts between two groups of people, and that's, sometimes I'll get these comments to say, "Oh, why are you always focusing on like oppressor, or something?" And I'm less interested in that. If something comes out looking like that, look at these are the people that end up conquering this group. It's why I like the Mongols so much. Is that what is it like when you have two people that have never heard of each other or have only heard about each other in these strange folklore myths come into contact with each other? What happens? What are their beliefs? How are their beliefs shaped by that? How do their own
Yeah.
beliefs change? But then also, how do they deal with trying to live alongside these people? And so often it erupts in warfare and intolerance.
definitely, and they're a bit more evenly matched as well. If it's a first contact with the Mongols, as instead of it being like a one-sided oppressing thing, as you say, because the Mongols were coming against empires as well. It was empire versus empire, and that's
Yeah.
often when you have the most fascinating things going on because you've got immediately vast amounts of people coming into contact with other vast amounts of people. All of the everything that happened in Central Asia and all that after the Mongols is fascinating because they essentially settled everywhere and then
Yeah.
have affected the genetic makeup of all of those areas until today. Like you have little isolated enclaves that in Afghanistan and Turkmenistan and all these places that say, in their own folklore, they have always said they're descended from Genghis Khan's warriors. And I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe that genetic evidence has suggested that they are, or they may well have a lot of Mongol genetic heritage.
Yeah, and I love, we were talking about ancient history earlier and in medieval history. I think more and more our channel has delved into medieval history, I'd say. And I think the appeal for that is not that I've turned away from the other kind of history, You see, we have some more modern topics on the way. But I like that idea of still living in a world that has this element of folklore and legend in the way that people view the world. So there's still a poetry in the language. There's still this idea. We just did the Viking versus Irish one. And in that last battle, you have these accounts that they're propagandistic, but you can glean some elements of this. This is, if they're describing warfare in this way, you can broadly say warfare probably happened in a similar way, because they're not going to lie to their audience about using spears if nobody had used spears for 1,000 years.
Yeah.
But the other element of it is, once you're reading that, you're seeing certain things, like they say there are demons and fairies that are waiting over the battlefield in the sky because they're ready for all the souls that are going to come, and they'll harvest those souls after it. And that's just part of your story. And you live in a world where you could read that and you go, oh wow, okay, I guess that happened. And when you hear about the Mongols, the early reports of this sort of rumbling far in the east in Europe. I don't know if you're familiar with Prester John, the character Prester John.
I was thinking Prester John. Yeah, absolutely. The Christian king out in the far ends of the earth.
Yeah, you might have heard that the Khwarezmian Empire is being attacked, and you go, look, someone's fighting our Muslim enemies. Must be a Christian. He must be sort of on our side, and there are some remnants of Nestorian Christianity there.
That's the thing. Yeah, there's a weird shred of truth there, because the Mongols, as far as I'm aware, were quite religiously tolerant. So there may well have been some Christians. Is that
Christian
right?
and Muslim Mongols?
So
because they were kind of they had, obviously, their religion they thought was better than everybody else's, but I thought they sort of had a bit of religious tolerance.
Chris, isn't the Mongol kind of cosmology do we have evidence that they kind of believed on some level these other gods existed, and that you could curry favor with the Christ god or Allah or something?
Yeah, so the Mongols were generally henotheistic. So they had their own god, they had Tengri, but they could also believe in sort of an animistic worldview. And so part of the reason that they might respect your belief system is the fact that you have a state and you're functioning. It means that you have some god on your side. So if you are, there's a reason why they don't really want to shed the blood of Muslim nobles, or they don't want that blood to touch the ground, because you don't want to anger Allah. Clearly, you have these great cities. Allah does exist. He's one of these gods to them. Yeah. But you still can't defy the rulers of the universe. So we're going to take over. You can continue to worship.
And you can wrap up the leaders in a carpet and then trample them in a horse. And that's how you get rid of them.
Problem solved.
That's the way
or
to do it.
Or boil them. Boil them in a big pot. Yeah. That's that's interesting, because in the Aztec world, they did a similar sort of thing, except they would essentially collect other nations' gods, and they would collect them and bring them back to Tenochtitlan, where they just had like a giant pile of idols, and they would try and essentially, in a way, kind of like kidnap these people's gods to be on their side, and therefore sort of demoralize them in that way and bring them into the Aztec Empire, because they incorporated their gods into their pantheon.
Yeah, I was just talking with Jack Meister the other day, and we were looking at some Christian inscriptions that you can find in Mongolia, because part of what happened is you have early missionaries from the Church of the East, Constantinople, that are trying to make these contacts out east, and they're called Nestorian Christians. I think it's sort of a post hoc denomination, because Nestorius was later declared a heretic, but it's not necessarily that the Nestorian Christians are following his heresies.
As all the best Christians were.
But
Arianism was a heresy,
But I think it was just conflated because he was a prominent Byzantine or Eastern Roman missionary, that they took to calling these people in the East Nestorian Christians. But I'll show you. Here's a shrine or tombstone found, I think, in the roughly Mongol region. And what you'll notice about them too is that they often have a very, if you look up more of them, they often have a very Eastern Byzantine look to them, because that is the version of Christianity that they came in contact with. Now, like all of these conversions, once you actually look into it, like the people who have turned Christian still have like 3 wives or something, and it's like, all right, you do the best you can, and yeah, so
like sort of 10th century Scandinavia, they were kind of like, yeah, we'll be Christian. You can send us your priests. Just if we can join your world and get your trade goods and all that, no worries.
Oh yeah, Brian Baru. It's there's still this element of these pagan sacred hills and trees that you have.
Big time.
Different authors are still talking about. All right, so we know he had these 3 wives. We don't know if he had them at the same time or if they were at different times, because anything's possible at that point.
Yep.
I found out the other day that Egyptian paganism actually, I think the latest account we have of it being worshipped still was, I think, the 6th century.
It was during the reign of Justinian. I've actually seen one of the very last inscriptions.
Really?
It's
I didn't know it survived that long. Like, it's just
I
crazy.
believe it. I think it was the reign of Justinian. Which is 6th century. Yeah.
They shut down the last temples or something.
That's right. Yeah. Final crackdown. But yeah. Egyptian paganism, I suppose you call it, but the Egyptian religion, the old Egyptian religion, was really influential. Super influential. The influences of that on like Greece as well is fascinating, because the Mycenaean Greeks were massively influenced by Egypt, just like the Minoans were as well. Just interesting kind of like how those influences like spread out, and don't know where I'm going with that point.
A couple more questions here. Put your questions in the chat if you got any last ones you want to get in. One of them was from Ed. I think we've answered a couple from Ed. Will Pete ever write a book? Couldn't you just publish one of your scripts for your videos?
Hopefully. I've been working on a book for a while actually now, so hopefully that'll go somewhere. I'll try and get it published conventionally, but if somebody says, Pete, this is a ridiculous book, this is unpublishable, I'll just self-publish it probably. So it'll be released in one form or another, or I'll cut half of it out or whatever and make it publishable. But I'm generally working towards that in the future. Hopefully at some point in the next 5 years.
You seem well poised to be able to do that sort of long form work.
Yeah, it's a slightly different thing, because writing a script, obviously, you can say, for example, you can just go Göbekli Tepe, and then it'd be like, show it on a screen and that. If you're writing it in a book, you have to kind of be a bit more flair and a bit more descriptive. So it's a slightly different thing. At first, I just thought, it's the same thing, but it's slightly more complicated, I would say. I've become a script writer, basically. So it's a slightly different skill.
So but, Joe and I... Well, Joe and I have thought about doing a book down the line that would meld my writing with Joe's art and have illustrations in it. It would be more expensive to publish, but I think that would be kind of a cool melding, and maybe we jump to different stories so that you almost have mini scripts that are like a chapter and you're getting illustrations to go along with that. But yeah, if people were interested,
that'd be good. Yeah, I mean, I see YouTubers releasing books all the time, and like there are publishers out there that just release books by YouTubers. So I'm sure somebody would publish it.
some nice comments here. We need you guys to do a joint podcast. I could listen to this regularly. Thank you, Ivar. We could do more podcasts in the future.
Nice guy.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah,
How
we
do
do this again.
y'all do it so the scripts don't look like a Wikipedia article?
Probably don't rely on Wikipedia.
Yeah. I mean, so there's an element of summary that always happens with Wikipedia. And especially when you're looking, I think for you, it's long form content. But for me, it's also just trying to pull out a narrative and then trying to figure out what things look like for Joe's art's sake. You literally can't do our style of video with Wikipedia because you're not going to know what the sorts of arrows look like or what, a description of the Mongol horde really look like from Wikipedia. If anything, it's a crappy translation quote that they've thrown in there. And so you actually have to dig into those books. And once you're reading pages and pages and pages, maybe this is how you do it too. You come across things, you're like, yes, this has to go in the video. This is a scene in the video. This is another scene. I'm going to mention this. This is what I'm opening this section with.
Yeah, that's exactly how I do it. You'll be reading and you'll be 30 pages in or whatever. And then suddenly there's a eureka moment and you're like, this is the intro. Come on. And then I'll go off and I'll write the intro right there. Or I'll just make a note of it and do it the next day or whatever. But yeah, it's got to be an exciting moment, a really exciting thing that happened. Yeah, Wikipedia is really good for just reading and finding summaries. But actually the research side of things, I try and avoid it because it's just, you're also going to put out the same thing that everybody else would put out.
Yeah.
Is the way that
I also think it's good for falling down that rabbit hole at first. But then when you want to learn with some depth and you want to present it to people, you're going to need real sources. And if you want more detail, you're just not going to find it there. So
it's good for finding what sources to look at.
Yeah.
So it's good at, like, if you're looking at Viking raid on Lindisfarne, then you can go and you can say, what's the further reading? Where are the sources? And you can see, Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, yada, yada, yada. And you can go and read that.
So Philip asks, have you done a video on early Polynesia? I don't know what you consider early. We've done one on Easter Island, the Birdman cults, and Hawaii. So we mentioned the peopling of those regions. Have you done anything on Polynesia, Pete?
Your Hawaii video was awesome, and I actually learned a lot.
Thank you.
I want to go to Hawaii now. It was very, very cool. I actually did a video on the first people in New Zealand about 4 years ago. Which, early Polynesia, because the Maori, I'm not sure how to pronounce it exactly, because but it's apparently not. That was an interesting.
Okay.
My cousin is I've got family in New Zealand, and it's like Maori, I think, is the accepted thing now, like Maori.
You know what? Whenever you have a different
Maori,
pronunciation,
anyway,
I assume that's the British way of saying it. So I usually give you credence. You say something like, did you say it wrong? That's probably how it's said.
Yeah, but then I have 100 people telling me I'm an idiot in the comments.
So yeah, like I mentioned earlier, I'd love to do some more stuff on Polynesia. The Tweetongan Empire would be amazing. I think Joe's art for those episodes could be really cool. We kind of have those. Yeah. Just imagine a canoe under big stars and stuff could be really cool.
Yeah. Oh, that would be great.
Let me jump through a few more here. Zero Connection. Any
I
plans
love
on doing a
Polynesian
video
history
on the Opium Wars? I'm trying to find something on China. I'm trying to find some Chinese history to do. Might be more recent.
Trouble with the Opium Wars is you should totally do the Opium Wars. And I'd love to cover the Opium Wars. It's just so depressing, though. And it kind of like puts China in a bit of a bad light because obviously it puts the British in a terrible light. But just nobody really comes out of it.
Puts humans in a bad light.
Yeah, nobody comes out of the situation looking good. And I just think
I've thought about the Boxer Rebellion too.
Yeah, again, the Boxer Rebellion, is that in the 20th century? Is it just before the First World War or just after the First World War?
99 to 1901.
Yeah, I get it mixed up with the Taiping Rebellion because that's another one as well. But both of those conflicts were devastating, absolutely devastating. I think the Boxer Rebellion, more people died than the First World War or something.
Is that right?
I think it might be the Taiping Rebellion.
No,
one of
them,
them,
100,000.
One of them,
Taiping.
It might be the Taiping. One of them, a huge amount of people died, and I'll have a quick Google.
Chris was looking into Mao's Cultural Revolution as well. Probably another depressing subject. It's not very. It's not a very chirpy time.
We got to break it up with some happy ones.
So here we go.
Taiping donation. Thank you.
Taiping Rebellion.
Thank you.
20 to 30 million people died. Insane.
Yeah,
it's a lot of damn people. Yeah, and it's just called the Rebellion. Like, that's not a rebellion. That's a flipping world war.
Yeah.
But China's just so massive that something can be described as a rebellion that anywhere else is a giant conflict.
Yeah, we mentioned a bit of the Ashanti in the Jamaican one we just did, but we'll definitely do some stuff on the Atlantic slave trade. Thank you guys for suggesting the most depressing possible topics here at the end. We'll go back. You know what could be a happy one? The star maps, the star navigation. That could be a happy one.
Yeah, I like doing a nice happy video sometimes.
Yeah.
I get a bit jaded by war. If I do war a bit too much, I want to do something happy.
Yeah. We did one, I think it was shortly after some pretty brutal one we did. We did one that concerned comic books, and nobody watched that. So it's like 3 years later, it has less than 100,000 views. We were coming off of the Viking versus Native American one, which was like, it had like 3 million views in a month, and we were like, we're invincible now. We can put out anything, and you guys will watch it. And it's like, oh my god, nobody watched this.
Was that the peak of your fame when you were on Joe Rogan?
We weren't on, but a little bit later, a few months later, he gave us
he gave you a shout out
on Instagram.
And you got how many subscribers?
120, 150K.
Yeah, overnight. It's crazy.
And again, it's Instagram, so I didn't even link it. It's just...
Oh, it was just on his Instagram.
You mentioned our name. Yeah.
We're still waiting for our podcast invitation.
That is a terrifying amount of power.
He's probably watching. Let's be honest. He's probably one of the 57 in the group here.
The Ivar the Boneless.
We got Joshua Davidson, Alexander the Great. So that is sort of a milestone. That's a milestone or sort of bucket list episode for Joe and I. It would be a really long Alexander the Great one. And I would torture Joe into making 150 paintings for it or something. But it would be our magnum opus. So that would be... There's so much ground you can cover, so much different terrain, artistic ways to take it, enormous battles. I think that could be really cool. Zero Connection. You got to go watch some History Time. Bronze Age Collapse. He's your guy.
Bronze Age Collapse. Yeah, I mean, it's depressing, I suppose, but there are no... Well, there are some accounts of battles, but generally it's kind of going back to this kind of archaeological speculation again, which is less depressing. If you're reading a direct account of the Crusades and you're reading about people being killed and starving and eating each other and that's very depressing. Bronze Age Collapse. Fascinating. Yeah. What was the question? What caused the Bronze Age collapse?
Depressing topic.
What caused systems collapse? A big wide range of things caused it. Bit of everything: earthquakes, internal strife, climate issues.
Ivar admits he's a secret spy sent by the JRE.
We got him.
All right. With that, I think we've exhausted a bunch of these questions. Thank you, guys. Oh, we got a little question about ancient India, Hinduism, similarities with the polytheistic religions of ancient Greece, Rome, Egypt. I don't know that I would say that they came from the same place, but there was certainly a lot of syncretism in people combining those. I talk a little bit about that in our Gupta Empire one, and I'd like to do some more ancient India stuff because that again is a place that just is, it's sort of undercovered for
It's definitely undercovered.
the megalithic structures you're seeing there and the contributions
Absolutely.
to our current scientific knowledge. It's just sort of people just don't know. I don't even know it's that people have a bias towards it. It's they don't have an opinion on it. So
that's right. That's right. In India and China, I actually think are both quite underrepresented.
Yeah,
particularly in the YouTube sphere. So people should do more on those guys.
We also saw a lot of cultural crossover with Egypt and Rome. Was it Serapis was a syncretic god, right? The Egyptians. Mm-hmm. Serapis was like the Zeus.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, it was like Zeus
it happened all the time. Yeah. Well, Zeus was also our moon. Zeus, our moon.
Okay.
And Zeus was also then syncretized with. What is it? Jupiter? No, who's Zeus in the Roman pantheon? Jupiter? Yeah, Jupiter, king of the gods, who is then syncretized with the Celtic, one of the Celtic gods. They're all syncretized with each other. It's fascinating. Pretty much every Celtic god had a Roman counterpart.
Yeah,
and then every Egyptian god had a counterpart in Greece, and which also had a counterpart in Rome.
All right, JP.
Which isn't quite the same as the Hindu religion. There aren't direct counterparts.
JP found us through the recommended of History Time. Cool. Little cross-pollination here. I think we're all the same, really. We're just conflate us. We're the same. History Time and History Dose are basically the same thing. It's just a different pantheon.
Pete's favorite tea bag brand. That would be the tea bags that they have in the National Trust tea shops, which is Clippers tea. There you go. Now you know.
All right.
The important questions being asked.
That's
you're not allowed to have an opinion on that.
I dumped it in the harbor.
Yeah, exactly. You traitors.
All right. Well, thank you guys all for tuning in. Did I crack there? Did I?
Huh?
Was I slowing down there? It was slowing down for me. But anyway, it's a good time to have connection issues. It's a good time. I
don't think you're that.
Oh, somebody says there are direct counterparts actually. What, between Indian gods and Roman gods? Is that what you're saying?
Really?
No, I would say that there are direct counterparts, but I don't know that those. I wouldn't go so far to say that those came from the same.
Oh, thank you,
corpus
BK.
of knowledge.
That's one argument, though, isn't it? That they all stemmed from Indo-European deities, but I don't know too much about it.
Could be. I have to look into it more.
Because India, obviously, is the obviously, but they had their religion. Parts of it came from the Aryan invaders, who were Indo-Europeans, same as the Greeks and Romans and all that, Celts.
Yeah. All right. So now we're getting a ton of powerful African
on that note,
kingdoms at their height. We got a bunch of videos to make. Thank you all for the suggestions, the super chats, and thanks for sticking around and asking us questions. Gonna wrap it up here, and thank you, Pete, for joining us.
You're very welcome. Thanks, everyone.
Until next time.
See you soon.
See you.
Until next time.